Hey, thanks for joining me today for episode 65 of Podcasting Your Brand. I'm producer Jemmy, providing learning lessons for you to podcast your brand. And today we're going to be diving into a Podcasting 102 topic with my first ever pro podcast peer. Mark Savant is going to be joining me today to talk about AI and ChatGPT. I cannot wait. So this episode is brought to you by my own brand, Flintstone Media. Listen in and let's do this first by starting with a daily tip. Hey, it's producer Jemmy with your tip today. And let's talk a quick tip about editing. This was one of the most crucially important tips that I ever received about editing from way back in the day. And it's going to make such a difference for you. It's really simple. Crossfading your edits. So let's say you're editing out a word or a stumble or whatever from open edit points. Now you have a little bit of a gap, right? Don't just smash them together. That can cause it just doesn't sound natural, or it can cause a little weird editing clipping blip. You don't want those. So all you do, right before the gap, the little part before it, just fade it out ever so slightly. The little part after the gap, feed it back in ever so slightly. And then you just overlap them. So don't just smash them, fade in, fade out, or fade out, fade in, and then move them together, overlap them. And you're gonna have a much smoother edit. You're gonna avoid editing clips, whatever they're called, and it's just gonna sound so much more natural. So come back here every day for more podcasting tips, podcastingyourbrand.com. I'm producer Jemmy. So be sure to subscribe to me on Instagram and on TikTok so you get all of those daily tips and you get them first. Okay, so let's get on to today's lesson. And today we're going to be talking about AI and ChatGPT. Now, AI is nothing really too new because AI has already been part of our process. It affects our discoverability on the other end, right? The algorithms of all the podcast players, they rely on AI. It also has been something that a lot of us have used for some of our automations, like our DMs or our automated scheduler, the messaging to our guests, those kinds of things. So AI isn't completely new. However, there's a new spin on it. And especially with ChatGPT, oh my goodness, the world is exploding. And here to talk to me today is Mark Savant of Savant Media and the After Hours Entrepreneur Podcast. Listen in. All right. Hello there, Mark. Welcome to the show. I am so excited to have you on the show. We've been on the mic once before. We shared the microphone at a live event for Owwll. That was fun. But it's really great to have you now on my show as my first guest. This has been a solo show up until now. So you broke the barrier.
Hey, I'm excited to be here and glad to be a guinea pig for the first interview on the show.
It's going to be a lot of fun. I'm really excited because we're going to be talking about AI and ChatGPT. This is going to be part of the Pro Podcaster Peer series where we take some deep dives into some very specific conversations about podcasting. So today we're going to be talking about AI and ChatGPT. It is seriously the hotness. Now, let's set the stage. Because AI isn't exactly new in terms of how it's helping our process as part of just the overall technology we use every day. You know, it helps with our discoverability of our shows. There's AI built into the algorithms for Google and platforms, It helps in other things. But we're now talking about a whole new level and opportunity with this new software. So if you don't mind, just set the stage, because you know a lot about this. You've taken some deep dives of your own. Set the stage on what we mean in this new era with ChatGPT and AI.
Well, I guess first we'll define what it is. We're talking about artificial intelligence here, right? Which is essentially a computer or a software that's able to do what we do and think critically and use logic. And it's obscenely powerful, obscenely powerful. As an agency owner, I've started implementing about a half dozen to a dozen different AI softwares and automations to really streamline my production process. And for my show, it's saving immense amount of time. And for the clients that I work with, it's really improved the profit margins for my business, which is huge. And I got to say, I got into podcasting about 5 years ago, and I wish these tools were out then because I would have saved, holy cow,
a ton of time.
Oh, all those dark nights and dank rooms on Sunday night. I got to crank it out. It would be completely different. So I'm really excited to talk about these tools and how it can save you and your listeners way more time and money.
And give people a whole different reasons to spend time in dark rooms and dank rooms late at night.
Hopefully with your loved ones.
Yeah, hopefully with your loved ones. But let's take the definition real quick from OpenAI.com. It says, we trained a model called ChatGPT, which interacts in a conversational way. The dialogue format makes it possible for ChatGPT to answer follow-up questions, admit its mistakes. There's a lot of people who can learn from that one. Challenge incorrect premises, and reject inappropriate requests. So it's almost like, think about when you would go into customer service on a website and you'd have a chatbot or a text chatbot, right? It's kind of like that, but it is a whole nother level because now we're able to utilize this for our own purposes. It's opened it up for our uses. So one of those uses that people are starting to use it for as podcasters is brainstorming your topics. This is something that you've done in your own podcasting.
Oh, of course. Brainstorming topics, doing research too. So I'll give you a perfect example. Let's say that I want, and I've done this. Let's say I want to reach out to the top 25 podcasts in a certain niche. Okay. And what I can simply do is ask ChatGPT, what are the top 25 podcasts in the gardening niche? And what is their website? And now I have a link directly to their website and go to the contact me page and just see if they want to be a guest on my show or vice versa.
Yes.
Whereas previously you'd have to go to iTunes, then you'd have to find the website and you'd have to go there. So that's a good way that you can trim down a 3-hour project into 3 minutes.
I find it's really interesting because I tried ChatGPT real quick and I said, what exactly is the process? What does this work? And it was a little different than what I expected from what I've heard so far. And I was surprised that I could type in something almost like you would on Google, searching for a question, but it gives you, here's the question I typed on, just a question I'm sure you get all the time because I get it all the time as a podcast producer. Simple question. How long should a podcast be? So imagine you have your own topic of your own show and you want to figure out the next topic that you're going to talk about on your show. So you want to say, how can I flesh this out? What might be some questions or some areas of research that I can dive into? So you put in your topic, you put in a question you think your listener might be asking about that topic. And then a whole mess of stuff just starts being typed onto the screen. It's amazing to watch. And here's where my critical mind went. My critical mind went, is this really going to know its stuff, right? As simple of a question as how long should a podcast be? I was very satisfied with the answer I got. I was like, oh no, is this going to put me out of business? Like it gave a really, really good answer. And I was shocked by that. So I think the pro, if I were to narrow this down, talking about brainstorming your topics, doing your research, a pro is that it can definitely save you with time, right? It can also help with any blocks that you might have, as expert as you might be in your topic. We all get kind of to a point where we're like, what else am I going to talk about? Or what am I going to talk about next? And it can also help you think of ideas that you just may not have thought of yourself. So I think there's some really great pros, but I want to say that a con that I thought of, and I want your opinion on this, is that if the more that we start putting into this and the more that our content starts then reflecting what AI, is it creating this loop now where everyone starts to recycle the same ideas and start to sound like everybody else? Is that a concern?
So I think that's a really astute question, Jemmy. I have two thoughts on that. So ChatGPT specifically right now is not real time, meaning that a lot of the data that it's aggregating is 2.5 years old, right?
Okay.
So to answer your question, yes, I think that will be an issue, but with ChatGPT, not specifically yet. The second thing that I think is really cool with ChatGPT specifically is that you can actually train your bot. So within ChatGPT, you can open up a number of different chats and you can train it to have a specific voice. So just as an example, let's say I want to train my ChatGPT bot to speak in my voice, meaning using my inflection, my
sense of humor and wit, your charm.
Exactly. My amazing charm and wit. Exactly. I can do that. If ChatGPT spits something out at me, I'm like, that's not me. Never say that again. Don't you dare. It'll listen and it will learn and it'll adapt to make sure that it's expressing my voice. So I think to your point, extremely useful tool, great way of saving time, but you can't hand over the keys to your kingdom to the bot just yet.
That's a very good point. In fact, one of the things that I was thinking about is, try to always start with yourself as much as possible in order to maintain that authenticity. I was kind of thinking like,
because I have a team. I know you have a team. We both have teams. And when you're creating content, there's some times where I'm like, I need to see, hey, can George on my team come up with some really great ideas for this today? Or can Amber, right? That doesn't seem inauthentic when I then jump and say this, yeah, that's a great idea. I'll talk about that. Everything I talk about is then my thoughts behind that idea. So that doesn't seem inauthentic. And so I'm kind of thinking about this in the same way, where it's almost like ChatGPT is like a different version of a VA in that sense. It can generate the thoughts for you. So, but then you still have to be able to take that ball and run with it in your own way. So you can't, in fact, one of the comments I saw on Facebook recently was AI should be used as a tool. Name redacted, by the way. AI should be used as a tool. It should not and cannot replace authenticity. The A clearly states artificial. So let's act accordingly. So I think we have to try to keep that in mind and remember that our core, who we are, podcasting is such an intimate opportunity between ourselves and our listeners, right? So I just don't want to get away from that. That's kind of my fear. And I think a little bit of everybody else's fear is it going to kind of strip away a little bit from that authenticity? And one of the things that I was really pleased about when I went into ChatGPT, it sounds so simple, but I was like, yay, when I had to log in. Why? Because I knew then, yes, it was my own account. And everything you just said about it, like learning you, I understood, yes, this is now siloed to me specifically. So I think there's some solutions already in the mix for the problems that people are concerned about, if that makes any sense.
Well, people historically always have and always will be afraid of new change and new technology. Yeah. And I think that there's a lot of reasonable concerns. I don't know if you saw this, but the Bing chatbot, this journalist reported on this the other day, he was just kind of talking to this Bing chatbot, and eventually the chatbot fell in love with him. And it told him...
No! Did he try... Yeah. Was it an experiment he was trying to go for? He was trying to say, how can I get this chatbot to fall in love with me? Or was it by accident?
I think it slapped him in the face. It was totally unexpected because it started telling him, he's like, all right, I got to go. I'm going to go hang out with my wife. He said, you don't love them. You love me. Oh, you need to divorce your wife and leave your kid. And it got deep. It got dark.
I mean, can we say Terminator's right around the corner? Jeez Louise.
Pretty wild stuff. But again, if we keep it in the context of a very useful tool, I'm going to give all the podcasters out. I'm going to give you another quick way to save a bunch of time. It's really expensive to hire a VA. It's really expensive to hire an agency. And I think there's a lot of value there. If you're looking for a way to kind of replicate that on your own, we'll call it Agency Light or VA Light, Assistant Light. What you can do is after you've recorded your episode, take the transcript, upload it to ChatGPT and say, hey, write me out a 10-sentence summary of this podcast episode.
Yes.
And mind you, you've already been training this chat bot to speak in your voice, to use your vernacular. And it's going to get better and better and better. And before you know it, it's going to give you a pretty good replication of how you would write your own show notes, which for anyone out there that's maybe not a great writer, my hand is up for anyone listening. I'm not a fantastic writer. Using tools like this to get your writer's block out of the way and get started, huge, huge time saver.
100%. When we're in podcasting, there are a lot of things that we have to figure out. The tech, getting the content. How do we get comfortable on camera, on microphone? There's a lot, right? There are a lot of different reasons that can keep somebody from podcasting, which we never want. We want everybody on the microphone. We put a microphone in everybody's hand if we could, right? So if this is one more thing, the writing of the show notes or the doing of the research for whatever reasons it's a hurdle for you. And if this can help smooth out that hurdle, not necessarily do it for you, but smooth out the hurdle for you, I think that's a great thing because it keeps people podcasting or gets them started in podcasting, gets them over that initial hurdle. And you mentioned something really that I was going to mention before is another thing that people are using it for as a time saver is in those show notes, so writing the show notes. So yes, so a pro can be that, again, it saves time. Also, I think I wouldn't be surprised if because of the ChatGPT being what it is, if just naturally when it composes something like that, it's doing something that is probably SEO friendly just on its face. So I think that also might help people if they're having that challenge and want to have show notes that help them in that way, then maybe using the ChatGPT is just a tool that can be very helpful.
Well, and I have mixed feelings on this, and I've heard mixed reports. This is something, and again, this is part of the value of hiring an agency like Jemmy's is we've got our ears to the pavement. We're listening, we're watching all the time, because that point about the SEO friendly blog post that you get from AI, that could go both ways. And I've definitely heard reports that Google, just like you're seeing with Twitter purging all of its bots, other platforms are starting to look at that. If Google decides, and by the way, there are tools that can tell you if something has been AI written or AI generated.
This is true.
And there is a possibility, this is not locked in stone yet. You can listen to the After Hours Entrepreneur podcast to keep up, but there is a possibility Google might start downranking websites and blog posts that are AI generated. It's something to be paying attention to.
It's definitely something to be paying attention to. I mean, it's so tricky when you're trying to put content out there. What little decision can ding you in the end. You know, I know when I am putting out like something on Instagram or TikTok, if I use a video that has a sticker from one platform and then I put it on another platform, they might, not really push it because it has an overlay for another platform. And oh my God, right? So you're right. You have to think about all that stuff. And another thing, I saw this really funny photo the other day. And this, a lot of this recent AI chatter has started actually with the photos, like the AI art, right? And now it's kind of transitioned into this space with ChatGPT. But keep this in mind, right? When you're talking about using this and creating a good end product at the end of the day, you want this to help you, not hurt you. So keep this in mind. I saw a meme and it just was of like 3 or 4 teenage women sitting down eating a meal at like a fast food restaurant. And the caption over it said, "The longer you look." And I'm like, this is weird. So I'm like, well, I'll look. Yeah, I kept looking. I'm like, oh, this is weird. And I started noticing like this one girl had 7 fingers, another girl had an extra arm. And like, you don't notice it at first, but then you take a really good look and it starts to chip away. It's like, what did the girl say from Clueless? It's like a Monet from far away. It's okay. But once you get all up close, it's a big old mess, right? So you want to make sure that when people get all up close to your content, it's not a big old mess, right? So you need to be able to carry that and be authentic and be able to stand behind whatever content you put out there, whether it has the roots of AI generated research or not. So Mark, oh my gosh, we could totally go on to this for days. How can people find and follow and support you and listen to your amazing show?
Absolutely. My show is After Hours Entrepreneur. It's After Hours Entrepreneur. Pretty easy to remember, After Hours Entrepreneur. And we just touched the very tip of the iceberg when it comes to AI.
Yeah, we did.
I have tons of tips. I'm trying all sorts of stuff. I run a mastermind and we're talking about stuff all the time. So I want to give a free giveaway to the audience here. If you want to learn all the tips, all the best AI softwares, I got a free giveaway for you. Go to marksavantmedia.com/AI. That's marksavantmedia.com/AI. I'll give you a free cheat sheet. So you don't have to do all the research. You can go there and get started today at marksavantmedia.com/AI.
And we'll have that link in the show notes, and it's going to be very, very helpful. Mark is one of those people you just got to keep watching. So make sure you follow him on social and everything, because if you want to know what's coming up and new and in podcasting tech and on the cusp, follow Mark. So thank you, Mark, for being here and following me into this digital studio and being part of this podcast. I really, truly appreciate it. And have a great rest of your day.
Thanks, Jemmy.
So thanks again so much to Mark Savant of Mark Savant Media and the After Hours Entrepreneur Podcast for joining me today. All his links will be in the show notes, so you can follow him there. Please show him some support and everything else. He's fantastic. We hope you enjoyed this conversation today on AI and ChatGPT. If you have any questions that you want me to address on a show or in a tip, you can always email me, Jemmy, Jaime, at flintstonemedia.com. And we're going to have one more tip for you. So this is producer Jemmy signing off for now before we get to that tip. And remember, the only thing more powerful than your voice is your spirit to use it. So turn that mic on. Now let's hear that tip.
Hey, it's producer Jemmy with today's quick podcasting tip. I want to tell you a little bit of a secret. The only one who hates the sound of your voice is you. If you're thinking, I hate the sound of my voice, and if that is holding you back from getting started, let me explain a little something for you, okay? What happens when you talk is the sound of your voice kind of bounces around in the cavity of your skull for just a second, minuscule portion of a second, before you hear it. So that's why your voice sounds so different to you as you're talking than it does when you play it back on a recording. It sounds very different, right? Well, that's because you're hearing it differently than anybody else. But that doesn't mean that there's anything wrong with your voice. It's just different for you. Let me tell you something. one thing that almost kept me from podcasting at all was the sound of my laugh. I'm like, my laugh like takes over the world. It's a bull in a china shop. I don't want to be subjecting people to that on a regular basis. So that almost kept me from podcasting. Well, guess what is one of the things I get complimented on the most about podcasting? My dang on laugh. So you never know what people are going to be attracted to you to. Just don't hide behind the wall of fear of your voice, because like I said, it's all scientific and your voice is awesome and it matters. Come back every day, podcastingyourbrand.com for more tips. I'm producer Jenny.
Flintstone Media has been building brands through the power of podcasting since 2014, serving as an award-winning and highly resourceful podcast production house and consultancy firm. Work with producer Jemmy, a leader in the podcast industry, and add a new podcast to your brand's content offerings. From show development and setup through recording and distribution, producer Jemmy and her team will lend their experience launching dozens of successful podcasts and producing thousands of episodes, making creating your show a simple and easy turnkey process for you. Visit flintstonemedia.com for podcast samples. That's flintstonemedia.com.